This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutra.com, Whole Family Nutrition. Welcome to the Healthy and Family Show. Each episode features interviews with doctors, experts, and real moms, revealing their secrets on how to keep you and your whole family holistically healthy. Your host is David A. Stone, award-winning movie producer, Amazon best-selling author, certified moringa grower, and founder of CompleteNutra.com, Whole Family Nutrition, which is committed to providing the highest quality, science-backed, non-GMO, all-natural nutritional supplements to keep your whole family healthy. Here's David.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is David A. Stone, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining me for episode 4 of the Healthy and Family Show. It's already been a great ride. We've been learning as we're going here. The quality of these things are getting a little bit better every single time. Today, I tried to do the interview using Zoom, so we're actually going to get a little bit better of a picture today on the other side of the camera. But the most important thing in all of these interviews is what Dr. Jessie says, because today I'm interviewing Dr. Jessie Keener again, and she's been a naturopath physician for over 30 years. So she has some incredible knowledge, and today we're going to be talking about glyphosate and GMOs and what they do to our bodies, how they affect our bodies when we eat them, and how basically our food's been weaponized against us when we look at how prevalent this is in everything. And we're also going to look at the connection between how glyphosate actually works in the soil to stop. It's the product called Roundup when you spray it on plants. What is it doing to the soil, and how does it kill those weeds? The similar effects that it has on the soil are the effects that glyphosate has on our own bodies. So you're going to learn the science behind that today. So I hope you're very excited to join me today. But this GMO discussion is one of the reasons that I started CompleteNutra.com. CompleteNutra.com is non-GMO products. Every single one of these products up on top here, non-GMO. And we very much make sure that we commit to that, because I don't want to be taking any GMO products. I take a lot of my products. I don't want my family, I don't want my friends, I don't want anybody taking GMOs. And you're going to see why in this episode. So I'm really excited that you guys are here. And before we jump in, I want to quickly talk to you about Complete Turmeric, because Complete Turmeric, this is actually our most popular product, and there's a reason this is our most popular product. If you guys know a little bit about turmeric, turmeric is an incredible herb. It's a powerhouse. It has so many antioxidants in here, but one of the big things that turmeric actually does is it increases our body's ability to use antioxidants. So it enhances our body's ability to use the antioxidants that we give it. Not only that, it has a lot of antioxidants in it. Now, this is complete turmeric, and there's a reason this is called complete turmeric, because turmeric in its raw form is amazing, but our bodies can only absorb so much of it in its raw form. So the reason this is called complete turmeric and not just turmeric is because of the additional ingredients that we have in it. This is a powerhouse formula because inside turmeric is the anti-inflammatory compounds called curcuminoids. And so what we do with complete turmeric is we take the raw powder, the raw turmeric powder, but we also extract 95% curcuminoids, which you got to check the higher percentages, the better. So we have a 95% extraction of curcuminoids, and that's what we add into this. It gives it a really powerful punch against free radicals. So why do antioxidants matter? Because antioxidants fight free radicals, and free radicals are the things that attack all of our cells. Free radicals are the things linked to cancer. So if you can attack the free radicals with the antioxidants, which are in turmeric, then there's many benefits. And you can just go to PubMed.com if you want to search for turmeric plus curcuminoids, because the curcuminoids are the extract out of the turmeric. So you kind of want both of them combined. But that's not it. This is complete because we have 3 ingredients. The third ingredient in complete turmeric is called bioperin. Bioperin is an extract that comes out of black pepper. And what it does is it actually acts as a vehicle to allow the turmeric and the curcuminoids to get absorbed by our body. In fact, with bioperin, the curcuminoids are absorbed by your body 2,000% more than if you don't use BioPerine, which means you have to take less turmeric to get the same benefits. So that's what complete turmeric is all about. The 3 ingredients are turmeric, curcuminoids, 95% curcuminoids, and the third and really powerful ingredient is called BioPerine, and that helps everything get absorbed by your body fully. So this is why it's complete turmeric. Don't forget, if you want to support our guest, go to CompleteNutra.com and load up your cart, and then at checkout put Dr. Keener 20 and you get 20% off your entire order. So if you want a whole bunch of these, you can actually get some pretty good deals by buying multiple bottles of things, and then you still get 20% off of that on top of it with the coupon code Dr. Keener 20. So, and you also are able to support our guest on the show today. So without further ado, I want to get into the show today and talk about GMOs. I want you to understand why it's important for us to be vigilant. And Dr. Jessie is going to be starting off the conversation with why she became a naturopath doctor and the whole story there, because it's really interesting, and I guarantee you a lot of you will probably identify with it a lot. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Jessie Keener. Hey Jessie, thank you so much for being on the show again. I'm really loving these conversations we're having.
Yeah, me too, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm really interested. We had a conversation in the last video. I had to actually cut out a few parts because it was choppy and stuff like that. I hope this is a little better quality for everybody. But I want to ask you a little bit about, you had a brush with cancer, and you have some backstory with some things and the reason you became a doctor. And I just wanted to kind of ask you to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Because I think it is a real big motivator when you've had health and then you lose your health completely, which is what happened to me. You definitely know the before and the after. And what happened was grew up healthy. I was very athletic on a swim team, super athletic in high school, went to a college, was on a college team, really into feeling great and having awesome performances. And then all of a sudden, it was just like all these things started going wrong. And I started developing insomnia and neck pain and back pain and debilitating pains. And then after a couple of years of that, I realized, well, my menstrual cycle has pretty much quit. I was depressed all the time, still couldn't sleep, started having fainting spells. And it was just like my body was unraveling. And none of my doctors really knew what to tell me. I mean, they really didn't know what to do. And
was this during college or like after college?
This was during college and right after college. So by the time I was out of college, I was fainting randomly. I would have no idea it was coming and only have a few seconds before, between the first symptom and then actually being on the floor and people bending over saying, young lady, are you okay? So, and none of my doctors had any answers, which meant to me that I needed to take more responsibility. I figured if they don't have the answers, I need to do more research. Now, this is going to date things horribly, but it was before the internet, Dave. So I had to go to the library, and I would come back out of that and think, my thyroid's low. I can tell from the symptoms, and I'd go back. So this went on and on. The doctors would be like, no, your blood test's perfect for your thyroid. No, that's not it. So it got worse. And then finally I started to receive chiropractic care. In fact, I was working for a chiropractor, and he was happy to do my x-rays and look at everything. And I was a wreck. I had a reverse curve in my neck. I had scoliosis that I was born with, but I'd also had an injury where my horse went down with me when I was 16. And that postural and structural stuff never was fixed. So now I had arthritis in my entire spine. That explained a lot about my pain syndrome. And, my doctor's recommendation was just that I stay on the pain medication, stay on the muscle relaxants. Well, those gave me other side effects and basically shut down my digestive system. So obviously those were not answers. The final straw, and this is what you mentioned, the brush with cancer, was my pap smear started showing up in the precancerous stage. Oh. And so I said to my gynecologist, okay, what's the plan? How are we going to back me out of this? Mm-hmm. And he just looked at me and he said, well, no, actually, we're going to do something called watchful waiting. And I said nothing because I was just kind of like inside my brain, I'm like, okay, this is important. I'm saying, okay, so how do I do that? He goes, no. We watch, we test over time, and we wait for the cancer to show up. And I said, okay, so there's nothing we can do here to make the fact that I'm precancerous go away. And he's like, no, we just have to watch and wait.
Wow.
So I left that conversation, really angry, because I came from a family where being smart, having intelligence, having common sense, pushing the envelope, being logical, all of that was highly valued. My dad was a college professor. So I was just furious. I couldn't believe that this was my circumstance, that I was just going to be left here. So I started taking more books out of the library on things like vitamins and herbs. And I remember reading some really amazing books early on about herbal remedies. So I started to experiment. There was a little co-op, and I'd moved to Austin, Texas after college because it was very warm, if not really hot there all the time, and I couldn't stay warm. Yes, it did turn out to be that I did have a thyroid problem, and that was why I couldn't stay warm. So the chiropractor actually said that I should find a clinical nutritionist. He said, I can only help you a little bit, but he did recommend some supplements. And Dave, some of those supplements did really help me. So I'm getting this herbal natural remedy thing from some different directions, and I'm liking what I'm finding out. And then sure enough, I found a clinical nutritionist, and she was actually looking for someone to run her office. I applied for her office management position, got the job. It was awesome. She said, I'm not going to give you paid vacation. This is how it's going to work, but I will take your case. And she said, I will take your case. And I was trying not to be like a poker. I wanted to act calm, but I was thinking, this is like a miracle.
Yes.
This is like, I had the goosebumps and the whole thing, I'm like, this is like a God thing. So then later I got really paranoid. I thought, she's going to be so sorry she hired me when she actually finds out how much medical history I have. But she was up for it. Her name is Dr. Teresa Dale, by the way. And Teresa now is the dean of the California College of Natural Medicine. So she's gone all the way to the top of the educational field to get the word out better and more.
Awesome.
So she was able to do a lot of testing on me, and she was able to create protocols, if you will, based on her knowledge and her training using natural herbs and supplements, vitamins and minerals, homeopathic formulas. And it was very fascinating because I didn't understand the word toxic. I'd never really even heard that, but she said, you're very, very toxic. Your entire digestive system is pretty much shut down. Your pituitary gland up in your brain is pretty much shut down. But there are ways of re-engaging these. There are ingredients that will tonify them. There's ways we can build them back up. And I was like, wow, who knew? So it was almost like there was a second Jessie, that the whole time I was going through my personal office visit with her when she was going through the report of findings, I was also sitting here going, this is amazing. I didn't know this world existed. And I realized right then, right there, that there really are two worlds. There's the clinical nutrition, hardcore herbal medicine, hardcore vibrational medicine, homeopathic world, all quantifiable, all provable in quantum physics. And then we have the sort of the AMA world. So I was kind of in a shock state through that session, but I went away from that realizing, wow, this is truly a miracle in my life. And it's going to be unique for me because not everyone's going to even know what I'm talking about. So for the first few years, I just focused on me and getting well. But I was working in her clinic and I was helping other people and kind of reinforcing sometimes what she would say and all that kind of stuff. And I realized I have a calling for this. I really love this. I was getting well. I was getting stronger and stronger. We reversed the arthritis. She said, you're in a, my doctor, my gynecologist, the same one that said we do the watchful waiting, had also told me about 18 months before that, he said, well, your formal diagnosis is menopause because you haven't had a cycle in so long. And I'm like, menopause? But I'm only 23. And they said, yes, but you have the biology of like a 63-year-old. So Dr. Dale said to me, well, we're going to reverse that. And I couldn't believe it. It was like, again, wow. So
yeah, these are paradigm shifts. It's actually like, you're right. It's clinical nutrition versus watchful waiting and pharmaceuticals. And clinical nutrition is the building up of your body, giving your body figuring out what you need and giving your body the building blocks. And then the other side is more like the Band-Aids. Like, here, let's just put this on.
Treating the symptoms, not the cause. Right. That's the issue right there. So it was a whirlwind. 2.5 years later, everything that she said that we were going to reverse was reversed. So literally I went on to fall in love, get married. My daughter is now about to turn 34 years old. I was told I would never have children and I needed to learn how to live with that. So I had a burning desire, and that was to be a mom. So I had reason to follow the, at times, challenging programs that Dr. Dale put me on. I had to give up a lot of my favorite foods, Dave. I had to change what I was doing and how I was doing it. Even simple things like I used to race through my meals and literally bolt my food, barely chewing. I was flanked by brothers. So anyone that has brothers know they're going to eat fast and they're going to beat you to the second. So I learned to keep up and sometimes beat them. Well, Teresa Dale explained to me that if you don't chew thoroughly, you don't actually tell your pancreas down in your belly what's happening up in the mouth. And the pancreas actually will not know which enzymes to manufacture. And I looked at her, I said, I thought that was all kind of automatic. She goes, it's automatic based on your chewing. Wow. Not automatic based on you swallowed it. And I was like, wow, this is, whoever talked about this? Nobody.
Yeah, nobody.
I mean, yes, my mom said, don't talk with your mouth full. Or they'd say, finish chewing before you speak, but nobody.
You know what? So my grandpa mentioned, well, I was in real estate when I was younger, and I stopped doing wrestling in high school. I stopped being active, and I got into real estate, and I sat behind a desk for quite a few years, made some money, but whatever. Anyways, I put on a lot of weight. Like, I think I got up to 235 or something. Like, the heaviest I had been was when I was sitting in real estate behind a desk. So I went and visited my grandpa one year, and he was in Missouri. And the first thing he says to me was, you should probably start chewing your food a little bit slower and take your time eating because you're getting big, basically, is what he said. It was like telling me I was getting big. And his solution was chew your food slower, which I kind of was almost a little offended that he was telling me that I was kind of chunky. And I didn't really listen to what he was saying, but he didn't tell me why. He just said, chew your food slower, which I didn't realize there was actually science behind that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the body is wonderfully logical. Our bodies and everything about what works with the body is completely rational and logical. Wow. So indeed, the actual activation of our salivary glands as we're chewing whatever's in our mouth sends a silent communication to the pancreas saying, there is some meat in Dave's mouth. And then the pancreas says, good, now I know which enzyme to put out there.
Yeah.
So there was just a bunch of these little things that I'd never heard about. Another one that blew my mind was she said, don't drink liquids with your meals because those same enzymes we're talking about get excreted from the body of the pancreas as a liquid. So if you're pushing in a big glass of iced tea or a ton of water because you realize I should be drinking water, then you're diluting your enzymes, and that's going to cause your food to not digest well. And this was a huge aha moment for me when she said the following. She said, food that doesn't digest well ferments, rots, and putrefies in the gut. And those toxic gases that are formed go into the blood, and your liver has to filter them. She goes, that's one of the fastest ways people age their livers, is they don't realize that they're compromising their digestive power. So I mean, it was like all of this behavioral stuff had to start happening. So it started with, when you sit down to the meal, Jessie, and so I actually changed over to chopsticks and literally, unless it was soup, did everything with chopsticks. So as I started to get well, I realized, no, seriously, if I was a watchful waiting case, how many other cases will there be in the next 20, 30, 40 years? I should become like Teresa Dale. I need to do this. This is what I need to do. So, I mean, that's why I'm so passionate about this and why I love educating people, because honestly, though, I did feel like by now, because we're filming this in 2020, way back in the early 80s when I met Teresa Dale and had my life transformed and found my calling, I thought we'd be more progressed than we are right now. I really didn't think we'd be stuck in the middle of a pandemic called COVID-19 or coronavirus, that we'd still be arguing over whether zinc and vitamin C and vitamin D would be helpful in helping the immune system defend. This is what I was taught 40 years ago. It hasn't changed a bit. I just thought that the two sides would start to come together more.
Right.
And so that may be a big upside of this giant pandemic that we're having, is that it starts to get people kind of out of their hypnosis a little bit, that they may need to do some active things or some proactive things. And I think that's probably the most important thing as we start these series and educational conversations, exactly, is being proactive with your body as opposed to being reactive.
It's watchful waiting versus watchful action. Like you're still watching and you're keeping records. You're saying, hey, I'm taking this much omega-3s. This is how my body's reacting. These are how my tests are looking. This is how I'm feeling. It's watchful still, but it's watchful action, not watchful waiting.
Yeah, it's watchful, more like a mindful watching.
Mindful watching. Mindful. Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Mindful watching. Yeah.
Versus watchful waiting.
Right. So my whole conversation in my head had to start changing when I started working with Teresa Dale. So I'm going to give you a great example that's actually pertinent to the whole pandemic conversation. We know that one of the ways that coronavirus begins in the body is usually a sore throat. So before I worked with Teresa for all those years, if I, Jessie, woke up with a sore throat, I'd immediately go into a negative tailspin of, oh no, I hope it's not as bad as the last. I mean, I would just go off into this paradigm of, and it would kind of end with, well, I better try to gargle with some, warm salt water, but I'm probably doomed. I hope I don't have a fever. And then, takes the Jessie that came out of those 2.5, 3 years with Dr. Dale. And it's like, okay, I have a sore throat. So let me get up right away and start taking some echinacea, some vitamin C, some elderberry, and some zinc. Where's my homeopathic for virus, just in case? I don't know if it is or isn't, but I feel like I should take that. And good, now that I've got all that down and I've guzzled a bunch of water, let me go gargle with warm salt water and some colloidal silver. And let me just go ahead and bang this thing out. And so it's such a different way of being in the same situation. I woke up with a sore throat. So the other thing that I learned is waking up with a sore throat is going to have logic and a sequential, linear, logical equation behind it. In other words, this is not a random accident. It's happening because of X, Y, and Z.
Which could why do you have the sore throat?
Exactly, which could be anything from too low humidity in the bedroom because it was cold and I was running some heat during the night, and that shrunk the humidity down to 29%, and the mucous membranes can't handle that. And now we have a situation where they're compromised and they're dry and they hurt. And guess what really is attracted to that? Every pathogen you can think of, viruses, fungi, bacteria, they love kind of broken or upset mucous membranes. So, it's really a new world when we look at how to be well today, because nothing can be left to chance. Nothing can be left to, let's just do what our parents did and hope for the best. And I'm going to give you a really tremendous example of that, Dave, which is, back in the day when I was studying nutrition, we did not actually know about Roundup or glyphosate. We didn't have GMO foods. Years and years later, I learned that glyphosate actually entered the food agricultural industry in 1975, but nobody talked about it, kind of went in quietly, and there weren't Roundup Ready or GMOs yet, so no big deal, right? But over time, more and more agriculture used Roundup as a weed killer, and our wheat started to become tainted. So what was once called the staff of life has since 1975 systematically been evolving into the staff of death, because in today's commercial wheat grown in the United States of America, not only is the wheat seed GMO, which means Roundup Ready, which means it's going to get sprayed with Roundup during its life cycle, but after the wheat is cut, they come back through and drench it again, spray it thoroughly with Roundup, because that speeds up the drying out or desiccation phase. So your wheat, staff of life, remember, is now truly a death staff, because you're eating glyphosate, and the liver, and this is really tragic, and this is why we can't be complacent, we have to really be proactive. The liver mistakes the molecular structure of the glyphosate for a nearly identical amino acid called L-glycine. So it actually takes up the Roundup. It brings it into its processes into the flesh of the liver, and it starts working with it as if it was L-glycine, but it isn't. So we're seeing a huge increase in fatty liver disease with non-alcoholic patients because of how the liver has to start incredibly creating fat to protect itself from this enemy, this villain, but it's too late. It's already in the liver, you see. So today they're doing that with wheat and corn and probably every other commercial grain that gets cut and lays on a field and needs to hurry up and dry. So what are we really saying here? We're saying that our food has been weaponized. That's what we're saying here. And that you can't leave it up to chance, that you just can't afford to leave it up to chance if you value your health and well-being. If you already have some issues and some illnesses, you definitely can't leave it up for chance. And Dave, that's part of why I'm so excited about this series that you're doing, is you're being an advocate and a broadcaster of options and information and choices. You know, we have to learn how to change from the inside out. I had to change my palate. I had to literally transform my taste buds. And it didn't happen overnight. It happened over time. But I had to go from craving pizza to really being okay with not having it, because those particular foods ended up being the worst for my gut and for my health. And there's a long conversation about food sensitivities and the toxicity issues with things like dairy in America. So again, it's individual, but there's very many similarities.
But they all come together because the dairy industry is feeding the cows GMO grains. So we're in a pandemic right now, a global pandemic, but you know what? We've been in a silent global pandemic for since 1975 with this glyphosate and GMOs. And when people understand what Roundup does in the soil, it makes a little bit more sense, because it does the exact same thing in our body. When you spray Roundup on the weed, what it does is it's a sodium-based product, and it gets in the soil and it locks up all the nutrients, makes the nutrients unavailable for the plants to use, so the plant can't grow. It creates a completely sterile environment. Now, here's the problem with the sterile environment in soil. Is a sterile environment, you don't have any fungus, you don't have any worms, you don't have any bugs. So we don't grow trees, we grow soil, and the soil grows the trees. The life in the soil and the processing of the life in the soil, when it eats everything and the decay, that produces the nutrients available for the plants to eat in an organic environment. And so what we're doing with Roundup is we're just locking up all the nutrients. So there's nothing, the ground is completely sterile, which is why they need to sell them the other fertilizers, the chemical fertilizers, because now the ground is sterile, no weeds, nothing will grow. So if they plant a GMO seed that not only will not die with the poison being sprayed on it, it'll just resist. It's the one thing, but it still needs to eat. So how does it eat? Well, we add some additional chemical fertilizers. So the plants need to eat in order to grow. But when we sterilize the soil, nothing can grow in the soil anymore. So we have to feed it chemical food, which is the way most wheat is grown in the first place anyway. Here's the other thing. When the seed comes from a GMO piece of wheat, it is infertile. You cannot replant the seed produced from a piece of GMO wheat. In the past, with farmers, it was the staff of life. In the history of the entire world, like wheat is staff of life. Like when you plant one seed, you get a lot of seeds that you can plant. Well, GMO proprietaries seeds. It makes these big companies basically saying, well, you don't want weeds, locking up all the nutrients, killing all the life. Well, when we eat the GMO, it sterilizes our body. It has problems with infertility. If we eat a lot of GMOs, we do, because the seeds don't fertilize and grow again. So there's many things, and it locks up all the nutrients in our gut. So our bodies can't actually absorb any nutrients coming in, which I think leads to leaky gut. So I just wanted to throw that, what GMOs in the soil do, because I think it correlates with what they do in our body.
Devastating to the ecology, and terrain of the soil, just as it's devastating the ecology and terrain of our GI tracts. And that's why Americans get so fat. You know, you mentioned before about how your granddad noticed that you had gotten a little fluffy there and was coaching you to chew your food. Americans get fat because fat warehouses the toxins. So
it's trying to protect us, really.
It's trying to buffer the vital organs from those deadly toxins. So it's going to wrap fat in the liver. It's going to wrap fat around the organs. Some of the fat will show as gaining weight. You'll look and be fluffier, but some people will just have the same appearance as the fat is busy wrapping around all their organs. So it's very serious, highly disruptive. Remember that Roundup or glyphosate is brought to you by the same people that created Agent Orange. So this is a company known for its deadly cancer-causing, predecessor already.
And it's a repurposed chemical. It was used for one thing.
Correct.
And then now that's why they use it as a desiccant. That's a second profit stream for them. So they use it as the weed killer, but then they've also approved it to be used as a desiccant on the chopped wheat. Like you said, they spray it when we've already harvested it. So it dries quicker. Well, it dries it out in like a week. Yeah, it dries a lot quicker, but it's like soaks all of it into every single grain of wheat. And and the insidious part, it does not have to be listed on any label.
Nope, and it isn't. So there's a lot to learn on the journey to getting well. There's a lot to learn. One of the most important aspects about the whole journey is that because things are the way they are, we have to have a tremendous amount of compassion for ourselves. We have to have the right tone of voice in our head, because some of this stuff is really going to irritate you at times when you realize, wow, I was really, somebody told me wrong, or a system trained me wrong, or just because my parents always did it and my grandparents always did it and their parents doesn't mean it even is going to add up to being good for you. Yeah. So, there's so much content here. It's kind of hard to figure out where do we go from here. But I think I do want to give people hope. And the hope is that every little thing that you do will start to matter. But being well is a very synergistic, integrated process. So you can't change one thing and expect everything to get better. That's not how it works. It's actually going to take many, many things over time. The body can't detoxify overnight. The body has to detoxify over time.
That might be another question we can bring up, because
that'd be a great conversation.
I've had a couple of my friends say, Dave, you just have different DNA than me, because I've been losing weight and getting in shape. And they're like, I'm too far gone. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, I think we're in a microwave fast food culture, progress now. But what we don't understand is every single day is like a mini version of our life. Like whatever we start doing today and keep doing, will benefit us. But we build on it. If we try to do everything at once, we're going to stop and burn ourselves out. But if we just pick one thing, try it for a month, try it for 2 months, that's a beneficial habit, maybe intermittent fasting, just choosing your eating window and eating 2 meals a day. If that's the only thing you change, even if you don't change what you're eating during that time, that might have an initial effect, but you will plateau, and then when you plateau, you can add in another thing, and it's easier at that point to layer.
And I think that's important to make the point that while you're starting to plateau, you're also going to have more energy. Because that one thing that you did, so let's just say all you did was chew your food thoroughly every bite before you swallowed it at every meal. Let's say that's all you did. Well, eventually you're just going to start to eat less, because you're going to see it's like a natural organic process. And then you're going to see, I just don't want to put as much on my plate, because last time I put that much on, I didn't finish. I'm going to take less. And then gradually there's just an awareness that starts to show up, like, oh, I see. I was overeating before, and now I'm really eating what my body wants. Well, guess what that looks like 6 months later? That looks like weight loss, but safe weight loss and conscious weight loss. So, we talked about this a little bit in one of the shows before. People need to stay awake at mealtime. They cannot afford to fall asleep and just be watching a mindless movie and shoveling food in. It's really about being related to the meal, related to the food. maybe expressing some gratitude before we actually start to eat, literally putting the fork down in between our bites and kind of looking around and maybe seeing the bird fly by and really like get our body in the right mode to receive that nourishment. And that is opposite of what we've seen for now a couple generations. You know, we laugh about how in the 60s there was this whole new ad campaign that came out about the coffee generation. You know, they drink a cup of coffee and they get stuff done. They're active. They work all day and they can get it. Well, that's great, and you can't be doing that at mealtime. So we kind of and then fast food was all part of that coffee generation training where it was okay to just go through a drive-through, get your coffee, of course, but then just slam a burger. And that just sort of silently swept through our culture. And now it's far more the norm than not that people will just eat unconsciously, barely chew, do it on the go, in the car, you know, whatever. And yet this is one of our foundations to health. This is one of the most important foundations. You know, we are what we eat and absorb. We also are what we don't digest and ferment. We become those toxic people.
Ooh,
so
wow. Yeah.
really interesting.
CompleteNutra.com, whole family nutrition.
Hi, Dr. Jessie Keener here, and we're going to talk about complete turmeric today because this is a superstar when it comes to one of the worst problems we're all dealing with our health, which is inflammation. Science has now said that inflammation precedes every known disease. So this is really a beginning way of treating the problem before it even starts. So whether you have cancer genes in your family, or whether you've just had a history of not eating well, or whether you're a teenager that definitely doesn't eat well, you need the complete turmeric because it works with the body, reducing inflammation. There's been massive amounts of studies on this. Some of the studies even show that this, coupled with our essential 6, the vitamin D3 and K2, really work better than a lot of anti-inflammatories on the market, and those all have side effects. So complete turmeric, this is for mom, this is for dad, this is for teenagers, and definitely college kids who are burning the candle at both ends. One a day unless you're directed more by your physician or your naturopathic physician. But this is in my cabinet. It's a daily habit because we just can't get enough of the ingredients of turmeric in our everyday diet. The other genius behind this formula is it contains something called bioperine, which is a black pepper extract. Bioperine, when you put it with other ingredients, it kind of expands the capacity of those ingredients. We call it a synergistic effect where it makes the original product work even better because of the bioperine. So you know you're not only getting the best turmeric in your body, you're also getting that synergistic expansion effect with the bioperine. So mom, dad, you can take this after breakfast every day. Teenagers, after breakfast, after dinner. College kids, every day, no matter what, after a meal. Complete turmeric.
CompleteNutra.com, whole family nutrition.
And it's only been in my lifetime, Dave, that popular press is starting to recognize the folly of the 40s, 50s, and 60s here in America, which was, doesn't really matter what you eat. And there was literally a nutritionist for the New York Times named Jane Brody, and she literally said, doesn't matter what you put in, whether you put in fats and starches and sugars and it doesn't matter. The reality is, oh yes, it does. Because if you look at what ferments versus what doesn't ferment, that would be the decisive issue. So, you know, things like simple food.
It's not just calories in, calories out. That's way too simplified.
And she was saying it was. She was saying it was, and I'm like, oh no, I've come too far already. So even things like, you know, there's a ton of arguing these days about, is it okay to eat meat? Is it not okay to, you know, that's a whole nother great conversation. So let's say you've decided maybe to avoid glyphosated grain products in America, and you decided to convert from eating GMO-fed dairy and GMO-fed beef to maybe grass-fed beef. And then people go, oh, no, you should be a vegan. But the reality is not everyone can thrive as a vegan. Certain blood types are doomed to fail with veganism. So then it becomes, okay, how do we individuate? You know, the good news is we're in the information age. There's actually a great book out called Eat Right for Your Blood Type. People can go and see what their blood type is. And, you know, that's also funny, too, because when I got into this field, people knew their blood type. 40 years ago, if you asked someone in your age group, what's your blood type? They knew. Today, nobody knows. I have no idea.
I don't know.
Maybe your mother knows.
I
Maybe
know.
not.
I don't know my blood type, honestly.
But it makes
It hasn't
sense.
ever come up.
And it makes sense that if you understand how blood types originated, that the diet would be individuated to each type. So blood type O, which is my type, is the oldest type on the planet. And that's the blood type of the hunting, gathering, tribal Homo sapiens. Did they eat meat? They ate meat. Or fish or shrimp or lobster or crab or what, mussels. Did they eat, tubers and vegetables? Yes, they were gatherers. They would pull up, roots and gnaw on them. So that's what their diet was, basically. When agriculture started and people started the earlier forms of corn and the earlier forms of wheat, as that integrated into the diet over many generations, it actually changed the blood from the O, hunter-gatherer blood, to the A for agriculture. Because now the diet had literally changed. Now, what did that mean? It means that instead of being completely nomadic, those people were around the same area, tending to the land, year in, year out, and then growing larger and larger communities. So as agriculture developed more and more specialization, and now we've got all these different grains and all these different legumes, that's when the blood type B popped out. And then the last type to evolve is the AB blood type. That's actually the rarest blood type because it's the most recent blood type. Those are the only people, in my opinion, and lots of white paper on this behind me backing it up, that actually can thrive being vegans. The others will experience nutritional deficiencies being vegan. Can you make it as a vegan if you have a blood type O? Maybe, but you'd have to take a lot of supplements, and some of those supplements might not be vegan. So there you go. So it's very fascinating, but the reality is, if you slow down everything and go, what matters the most is my state of mind when I'm eating. What matters the most is because I'm chewing everything. After about 20 minutes of starting to eat, my brain is going to know that the meal happened. So if I'm chewing slowly and it takes me at least 20 minutes to eat, which it really should, then we're going to what? Stop overeating. We're going to feel our fullness. We're going to get more related to ourselves, and our digestion is going to increase. Our liver is going to start feeling some relief, which means it can manage hormones and do our circulation stuff better. And we're just going to start to pop into more awareness. And that's what I love about this field is every little thing will add up, but you can never become complacent. I always joke and say, the reason you can't be complacent is because gravity is always gravity. It's gonna pull you down, you're gonna wrinkle, there's gonna be gravity sucking on your body. So we have to keep, very proactive with this. But I think it's also so much more fun today than it was 40 years ago.
Awesome. And it's also so much information out there today that it can be quite confusing for everybody, because everybody's saying, be plant-based or be. And so here's the other insidious thing, the conversation, we need to ask the right questions here, because there's a conversation going on right now. I'm plant-based or I'm meat-based. And it's like, oh, okay, now, but that's now a marketing opportunity, because now people are buying all plant-based. I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, I'm not eating meat anymore. However, you're still eating processed everything. Like if it's vegan, doesn't mean it's not processed. And so if you go into the Burger King now has that new Impossible Burger, well, do you think as a vegan that that's going to be healthier for you than an actual piece of crap regular burger? I think it's maybe the same. It might even be worse, because these are completely engineered in a lab. I don't know. It's probably it's probably the same. It's just junk food. It's not.
It's very toxic. Either they're going to have soy oil, which
what happens when we eat,
or canola.
What is our body trying to do when we eat? Well, we're eating something. Our body takes it apart and takes all of the beneficial nutrients and so our body can function and build and grow. Well, if we're never taking in any nutrients at all by what we're eating, or a very, very little amount of nutrients, especially now, even if we're trying to eat healthy, and this kind of gets into supplementation, even if we're really trying to eat healthy and we're trying to go buy a lot of vegetables, we're trying to go buy a lot of fruits and eat less meat and cook our food, Well, what we're not understanding is the way everything is grown. Even if it's organically grown, the soil has been depleted unless it's a super awesome organic farm. And there are a few of those that feed soil heavily. And I bet you if we tested the nutrient value between a head of lettuce grown by a farmer that feeds the soil versus a head of lettuce that's organic in the store, it would be a very different profile. So feeding small independent farmers that have organic farms, I think is, if we want to be healthy, it's like people might be like, okay, you scared us to death with these GMO talks. Like, what do I eat now? I mean, what can I eat if it's in everything that's processed? Well, we might have to get back to a little bit more old school kind of farm days, like meet a farmer in driving distance, go visit the farm once in a while and pick up a bag of good stuff, go to a farmer's markets, maybe change the way we actually consume. Because that's, I think, part of the problem.
That's a major problem. People are not connected to their food. That's not how we evolved. How we evolved as a species literally was, our evolution was intimately and directly connected with our food and our food consumption. That made us who we are today. Never in the history of humanity have we had this gross experiment where food is chemically engineered to be addictive the minute it hits your mouth. That patented phrase, flavor burst, that's, companies spend millions researching how to get the right amount of sugar plus fat plus sweet to have it explode in the mouth all at once. We've never, ever existed in a situation where food was poison, but it was still called food.
Right.
So that's a pretty serious situation. It's very insidious, but it's very serious. So we have to be honest about that. So when people say, well, now that you've scared me to death with the GMO conversation, what do we eat? I mean, the conversation is, you eat real food.
Right.
If it's alive, that's what you want to eat. You can be a vegan if you want. I would personally say, unless you're an AB blood type, good luck with that. You're going to need a lot of supplements. But let's go to real food. So instead of ripping open something and sticking it in a microwave, let's get real broccoli. Let's, like you said, farmers markets, find people that are doing grass-fed cows. You can create, a food co-op if your community doesn't have a food co-op, but a lot of people are going to benefit from joining their local co-op, which has more buying power than the individual. So it's about going back to real food, because real food is what we evolved with. And only humans can be so insane that they think they can feed their body fuel that is completely outside of the body's design scope and be okay. Not happening. That's why the obesity. That's why the diabetes. That's why the heart disease. That's why, you name it, we got it, and Corona-19 on top, because the people that are getting sick with this current pandemic are all people eating processed foods, people already having diabetes, already on high blood pressure medication. I mean, the obesity just tips those scales. So it's simple. We have to really look at, is it real food? And we have to retrain our taste buds to be okay with real food. In France, when they take the baby off the breast and start introducing real food to baby, it's one vegetable pureed with a little bit of the vegetable broth that you steamed it in. So slightly cooked vegetable. Mom makes it herself, and one vegetable gets introduced as a pureed food. And then they stabilize that over several days. When baby seems fine with that, then they go to a second pureed vegetable.
That seems like way easier than, where's the baby food?
Do you know what this country, well, funny you should say that, because in this country, in America, the Pediatric Association prescribes cereal as the first food.
That's an immediate GMO. That'll drop the baby's immune system. You are immediately
GMOing. You are jacking their blood sugar, and you're going to create an addict. You're going to create a carbaholic, and that's what we've done. So, and there's on and on about, when is the time right to bring a baby into solid foods, but that's another conversation. But just
solid food that doesn't have poison in it. We just need to be more conscious and aware.
Way more, because France has nowhere near the obesity and diabetes that America does. And now we can see why, because babies are weaned onto vegetables. And I'm not talking mashed potatoes. I'm talking pureed broccoli, pureed green beans,
Awesome. Wow.
pureed yellow squash.
Uh-huh.
So they're trained as a palate.
Is
Children
GMO
in France,
banned
when they
in France? Isn't GMOs banned?
I think so. I think France and Italy have banned it. India
I think so
has
too.
Banned it. Russia
Because
banned it.
people
Mexico
think out
has
here
banned
to
it.
the other conversation that's going on that's a little bit off is gluten intolerant. Think you're gluten intolerant. Actually, you're probably just poison intolerant for the most part.
No, I'm not going to buy that.
No?
So there is a real thing called gluten intolerance. So
But in France,
before we
people
really
don't feel it as much eating a
much,
crepe
right.
versus in the US.
The wheat is different over there. Ours has been hybridized. Ours has really been hybridized. So that's part of the issue. But then people in France don't have the same medical obsession that we have in pediatrics in this country, which is the minute there's something wrong, you get that child on an antibiotic. I know and again, we could do a whole show on the mistakes that people make with children, and when children's bodies are trying to run fever or trying to cure itself of something, and how we intervene and make it so much harder for the body. The average French adult is going to have a much healthier digestive tract with that ecology of the gut flora that we were talking about before. Theirs is going to be way better, way better. Americans is the worst. We have the worst guts. We have the most amount of stress hormone, and we have the most amount of dementia. And that's a real issue.
Well, now they're calling dementia diabetes type 3, right?
Type 3 diabetes, right? Because they're finally, this is again, the sad thing that happens when you don't marry clinical nutrition and integrate it into AMA medicine. But we've known over here in the clinical nutritional field that when bodies start moving in a certain direction, that they have a syndrome going on called metabolic syndrome or syndrome X. It's a pre-medical syndrome. There's no actual disease yet, but there's 4 potential outcomes, all of which are deadly: cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. So clinical nutrition, we're talking 25, 30 years ago, had already shown all this, all the white paper, it's all done, basically. Did that change anything in AMA medicine? No, not a thing. No, it's okay. You would think that the clinical nutritionists would be the ones that the diabetics would all be listening to. But because of advertising and lobbying and whatever else, everyone with diabetes listens to the dietitian that's still trained the way the pediatricians train mom to put the baby on the cereal. And so it's just like, it's not even good logic. It's not even rational, but it's just what's still being done. So, but the hope I have, here's the thing that's really interesting. So, and maybe it's just divine order, divine timing, but we've got this giant pandemic. People have stopped working. They're slowed way down unless they're essential services. And there's a global focus now on health and well-being. That really hasn't happened before in this way.
That's a good
was
point.
There a giant pandemic in the early 1900s? There was, but we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media, and we didn't know. It would be a week later on the newspaper when you heard this day people died in Italy. And it was all kind of like slowed down. Now we have like this ripple of everyone kind of going, okay. And yes, there's going to be some people that just don't want to wake up. They'll be like, well, I've been drinking my diet soda my whole life, Dave. I'm not going to stop now.
It's like in the Matrix.
And God bless them.
It's like Cypher in the Matrix. It's like, I just want my steak. Give me that big, red, juicy steak. Place me back in the Matrix anywhere. Just make sure I don't remember anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Just make sure I'm fully wiped. So
just make me like a celebrity or someone with a little bit of money.
Yeah, a little money would be good. So that's the interesting thing. I've also, because I've been doing intermittent fasting for a number of years now and did a lot of experimentation with fasting. The other really simple thing that I can say to people, which I believe will give them a lot of hope in the long run, is, look, you've been lied to about even how much you need to eat. You don't need to be eating all that. That's right. You were just conned. Even the food pyramid is a complete hoax. It is totally. If people follow the food pyramid, they are destined to get obesity, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, diabetes, no doubt, and cancer. If an American follows the American food pyramid, they are marching themselves fast into a dread disease.
Isn't it called the Standard American Diet or the SAD?
Yeah, or the SAD diet, right. And again, this is what the Surgeon General said would be the best for us. So I have a lot of hope. I think there's going to be a lot of investigation over the next couple of years about all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, everything from our president just decided to stop funding the World Health Organization.
Wow.
Look, they've caused a lot of harm. There's probably a great deal of corruption there. They did not call this pandemic properly. Maybe their loyalties aren't really for the planet, who knows? But all of this is going to mean that there's more attention on what really does work. What really does work. It really does work to chew your food.
Mm-hmm.
It really does work to hydrate yourself in between your meals. It really does work to be conscious while you're eating. No other animal watches TV while they eat their meals. So all of these little things can add up really fast. When you go to the farmer's market and buy that broccoli, it's going to probably taste better than the broccoli you got at the grocery store.
Right.
So there's all these little upsides, and I've traveled a good chunk of the world, and I do recognize that the United States of America has the worst agricultural of anything. You go to countries that people go, oh, that's a third world country. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? Their lettuce tastes like lettuce. Their spinach will knock your socks off. Their carrots are to die for. They don't GMO. So what's the question?
Right.
So I do feel like there's a lot of hope, and there's going to be like this wave now of just interest, support, validation that our bodies can repair, they can restore. You can change your body drastically. That's what I did. Most of what I had going on was genetic, it turned out, plus lousy food choices, not understanding food sensitivities, repeatedly eating things that I didn't know I was sensitive to.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality was I was able to change my genetic patterning that set me up for so much of what I was struggling with. And that's a distinction that most people really would benefit from accepting, that your genes are just a suggestion of what, what God gave you. It's just a suggestion. It's a blueprint.
Right.
Anyone that knows basic architecture knows the blueprint is not the finished building.
Yeah.
You build your house, right? So don't confuse the blueprint with the solid structure of that building. Do not confuse your genes with the solid structure of what you've got here. Because it's really, really malleable, and that's what you weren't taught growing up. That's what they're not teaching us in high school in biology. I mean,
and don't expect it to happen tomorrow. Like, give it a year of dedicating time to yourself.
You have to give it the time. You have to. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. Totally worth it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm doing it this year. So I just did another practice that I just started, because I'm not doing yoga or anything, but I've been working out, but I'm inflexible. And so I put myself a desk on the floor. So I have a floor desk and a top desk. So I don't have a chair in here. So I can either stand up and work, or I can sit on the floor cross-legged and work. And I've been doing that this whole month. And now I can actually sit cross-legged again without my knees all doing all weird stuff. But I can't quite put it up. I can't. When I was a kid, I used to be able to put my foot behind my head, and I literally can barely touch my toes right now. And a lot of the things we used to do as children, sitting on the floor, we've forgotten about. And I think, anyways, I'm only bringing that up because that's been a practice that I started at the beginning of this month, just like the practice of walking 10,000 steps a day started at the beginning of this year, and the practice of intermittent fasting. But you don't have to do everything at once. It's just like, pick one thing and start it for like 30 days. Like, sit on the floor for 30 days while you're working on your computer. It's totally crazy. And my legs are getting all locked up. Like, after I sit there for like 20 minutes, I have to like lift my leg off and like stretch it out. I'm like, man, I'm going to make sure my legs can do this again at some point. But maybe it'll take me the whole rest of the year. It's the long game we're playing, because life is the long game. Just be respectful to our bodies, figure out what your body wants, and then what you want, and just kind of just expect it to be daily for a year. Yeah. Every action will matter. And that's really the beautiful thing about this. So maybe you can't afford to eat organic all the time, but you can afford to slow down at mealtime. You can afford to chew your food thoroughly and put your fork down in between bites and just contemplate how yummy and delicious this is. You can stop drinking a lot of beverages with your meals.
so that your body can focus those enzymes on getting that stuff broken down. You can start walking more than you walked before. I mean, it's just like little baby things.
Excellent.
And I believe that our birthright isn't what they told us. So again, a big giant con, a big giant lie is that you should get stiff in your 40s because the other people around you are getting stiff in their 40s and they can't touch their toes. And you should be hunched over in your 60s.
I'm getting old.
You should be senile by your 70s. These are the normal things that, and we were lied to.
Yeah.
No, that's that's what they want us to believe, so that we're not supremely powerful, so we're not full of vital energy. And so we probably, if we did all that and didn't, peter out so soon, we'd probably change some things radically about how life is on the planet.
Our bodies are designed to regenerate and heal, but not when we keep giving them poison. That's the ad absurdum part that we're throwing into the mix here is like, hey, eat this food that has poison in it and can't reproduce from seed, and it'll make you healthy. It's like,
and it'll make you healthy. And do that while you don't walk and move your body
and work harder.
And so that's the perfect.
And don't sleep.
Get in front of the blue screen. Don't sleep.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, because you're still drinking the coffee and you're the coffee generation. So it doesn't take much to look at the stats of Americans' health and go, wow.
And then when we start getting out of whack, if we're a normal person, we'll go to the doctor with our insurance. They'll book, here's Adderall, or here's a different stimulant. And those I think are way overprescribed too. But see, once you start getting addicted to that, then you need more and more and more and more and more. And man, if you ever get off Adderall, you're probably going to be sleeping for like a solid month if you've been on it for years. It's who has a whole month to take off? Well, right now, maybe people do.
maybe.
Go to rehab or something at your house. No, I'm just joking. But
so I think we're going to see. I would be willing to predict that a year from now, you and I are going to be stunned by how much attention your educational series has received and how many lives are starting to change just from simple, basic, logical instruction. Yes. Because this is the stuff that mom didn't know, so she couldn't teach us. But I know your mom and I know my mom, and if they had learned it, they would have taught it for sure.
Totally.
But now we know. I mean, how many times did mom sit down and say, now fill up that glass with milk before you sit down at the table, make sure you've got your full glass of orange juice at breakfast. So we were just indoctrinated into thinking this is how it is. But when you really study it, we got to question everything.
That clinical nutrition is medicine.
Correct. Yeah, because that's actually the part of science that gets it done. That's where literally livers get regenerated and pancreases get stabilized and blood.
But here's the thing too, that it's not like we can that's where sometimes people are looking for the easy, quick, hey doc, just give me a pill, I'll take it, whatever. It's like clinical nutrition is holistic. We have to address all the different areas of our life and our emotions and our mind. And it really is it involves a little bit of effort and energy. And you're right. Their hearts need to be open. Their ears need to be ready to hear, and they need to be ready for change. But I know there are a lot of people out there right now who are ready to change. And if you're ready to change, look, there's some very simple, you just gave tons of awesome, simple takeaways. Let's see, we got, just make sure you're in a great state of mind when you're eating, chew your food, try to chew, 30 or whatever times but just chew consciously. Don't eat poison. So be conscious of your
poison, right?
Of what you are eating, whether it's grains or whatever. And
don't eat liquids with the meal.
Don't drink liquids with the meal. Those are excellent.
Right. Yeah.
Those are excellent. Yeah.
And it's really true that as you go just through those basic things, and the digestion starts to improve, and the liver function starts to upgrade. And that's when people start to go, I'm less moody, I'm less irritable, maybe even a little less forgetful. And that's really exciting stuff. Very, very early on, those changes will start to take place. And then you have more resources, you have more brain power to go to work with working on anything, whether you're planting a garden or figuring out your next meal. It doesn't really matter. If you've got more energy, more brain power, because your organs are functioning well, you're going to fulfill yourself.
And you know, I hear some of these doctors saying, which just sounds cool to me, like they're like 40 is the new 20 because 160 is the new 100. I'm like, that sounds interesting. Let's figure that out.
I'll sign up for that.
Well, thank you so much. I think this episode is a really exciting one.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, Dave. Anytime.
Thank you for joining us for the Healthy and Family Show. Visit our website at healthyandfamily.com. That's healthyandfamily.com to see what all the other doctors, experts, and real moms have to say about keeping your whole family healthy. This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutrition.com, Whole Family Nutrition, and aired on the Goldstone Network. People, Planet, Future.